We saw a video where a guy was asking, what do I do? My girlfriend gave me an ultimatum if I didn't vote for who she wanted me to vote for. On Dave Ramsey, oh boy, we had something to say about this, didn't we, dear?
Yeah, perhaps things that they didn't quite bring themselves to say.
We think they missed the ball on this one by a long shot, and here's the brief breakdown of it. The guy said that he's been living with his girlfriend. He was getting ready to take her next week, I think is what he said, really soon, to propose in Mexico. And she told him, she saw the ballots there, and she told him that if he didn't vote for Kamala, that she was going to leave him. And the Dave Ramsey team, they answered the question, but not even close to what they should have answered, we don't think. So,
I think
what do you think, dear?
I think they were trying to not create too much of a stir. Some of their suggestions made me think that they were thinking the same thing that we would be thinking, but not wanting to say it.
So we're gonna say it.
Well, yeah, so the issue was he called in and said, what should I do? You know, my girlfriend that I've been with for 3 years, you know. And I was thinking to myself, first of all, how have you been boyfriend and girlfriend for 3 years and not figured this out already?
Yeah. Yeah. So our basic, simplifying it down to nothing is, dude, you need to run. Dump your vacation. I don't care if you lose $15,000, $20,000 on this trip. Dump it, or at least dump her. Go by yourself. Just blow off her portion of it. It is way cheaper to lose all of that money than to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars later in a divorce.
Well, the reason why I say dump her, and it is about that particular political candidate, but also it's not. Like if you're a guy in the situation, I'm just going to speak to the guy because I'm a guy. If you're the guy in this, yeah, thanks.
You don't have any announcements for me, do you?
I have no uncertainty about it. I'm a guy.
I guess. I kind of figured that out too.
If you're a guy in the situation and basically the girl that you're thinking about marrying is suddenly giving you an ultimatum, a harsh ultimatum that's basically a threat, you need to leave that. That's going to be a problem right from the beginning. And it doesn't really matter if it's about voting for the election or something else. Like,
now, if it's something about drinking or drugs or something like that, that's totally a different situation. But something like voting, if you're not on the same page with voting and religion.
But even if it's about drugs or something, she shouldn't say, dude, you have to quit drugs or I'm not marrying you. She should just say, I'm not marrying you because you're doing drugs.
Yeah. And
not be threatening. That threatening is going to be something over your head forever through your marriage. Mm. And if you're the woman in that situation, you might be thinking, well, girl power, I'm going to assert my independence and all that. And it's fine, like, for women to have opinions and women to want to, you know, be strong and powerful and all that. That's cool. But if you want to be strong and powerful and dominate your future husband, then you're asking to get married to a guy who's going to end up cheating on you and who's going to leave you in divorce and all this stuff, because no guy is going to want to be dominated by his wife. Or at least not for the long term. There might be guys that they're sucked into that easily because they're stupid.
Yeah.
But, and guys, I'm saying the same thing. Like, don't be stupid. I think part of the issue also is if your relationship before you get married is too intense, if it gets into the physical realm of,
if you're living together, yeah.
If you're living together like
sleeping
you're married,
together, yeah.
Then you're just going to completely lose any ability to think for yourself. Like, you're not going to rationally think about this person. Mm-hmm. And what's going to happen is you're both going to get married to each other and get irritated with each other after a while and get divorced and have all kinds of train wreck. And so this is the kind of thing you should look out for ahead of time. And
there are signs. There are warning signs. Dude, this is a warning sign. This is a really big one. I had a friend who was being very abused by her husband, and she left him for a little bit, and then they went back and they were having kids and all this. But she confessed to me one day that literally minutes before the wedding, we're talking 10, 15 minutes before the wedding, He slammed her up against the wall in a chokehold. I don't care who would be at my wedding. If you did that to me, sorry, dude. I'm calling the cops. You're getting arrested. And this wedding is not happening. And you're getting arrested in front of your entire family.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And there are signs. Now, I understand there is the occasional, oh, I just had no clue. I get that. But I, frankly, have never, ever run into anyone who has had any of those signs. Even Mike and I had signs before we were married of stuff. And I was like, dude, this is not going to happen. And he was like, hey, this is not going to happen. And
we were basically letting each other know this is a no-go. This is a deal breaker.
This is a deal breaker if this continues. And it's okay if people make a mistake one time. But the majority of time when you get to this stage of it where she's telling him that basically she's going to leave if he doesn't vote for Harris.
Well, what a
There's
trivial
way
thing.
other things.
I mean, it's not trivial, but it's trivial if you think that you're ready to be married and then you're fighting over that.
Yeah. Let me interrupt just a second here and just say this video is brought to you by our Dining on a Dime cookbook. Easy recipes to get you in and out of the kitchen quick that your family will love. The link is in the description below. livingonadime.com is where you can get it.
What I would say is, because I'm sure there are a lot of women that are saying, well, I'm a strong, independent woman and I don't need to have any man telling me, well, okay, that's fine. But when you get married, you both have to work together. One person can't say, I'm not listening to the other one. Like, you're together as one, in a sense, not two independent people that just go do whatever they want to do and then they just come live together. So
you have to agree on religion. You have to agree on politics.
So
or you're not going to have peace in your house.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to agree on those things. And if you are thinking about getting married and you haven't talked about that, you really need to talk about it.
Oh, yesterday. And money.
Political things, well, religious views, political things, and money, and how many kids you want and how you would raise them. These are all critical, life and death critical issues if you want to stay married. Yeah. Like, we've been married 30 years because we hashed all this out before we got married. But also, I would just say again, if you get physically involved, like sleeping together and stuff, then you're going to have no judgment. And those things that's not going to help you make good decisions. Like, that's going to take away your ability to make good decisions. And the good decisions, things will work out great for you in those other ways if you have clear thinking and you recognize. The other thing is that before you get married, you will recognize things that irritate you somewhat about the other person, or that, you might recognize things that make you say, I don't know about this person. And those things will be magnified when you will discover more of them when you marry a person. So if you go in thinking, well, I don't know about this on that person, but it's okay, we work well together. Oh, I don't know about this. Well, it'll probably be all right. If you have a whole lot of those, it's going to be a complete train wreck when you get married. Like, you need to go in with, man, I'm seriously sitting down thinking about it. And I just don't see a major catastrophe with anything. Like, there's nothing that makes me in my heart say, should I actually marry this person? I don't know. And if that's the way you are, then when you get married, you'll discover some things, but it won't be like breaking up kind of things. The other thing is Dave's crew, which, I like them. I think they were trying to be gentle, but in some ways they were saying,
well, check out the motives and all this. And I'm like,
deep down inside, find out what her motivation is for kind of thinking that way and see if you can find common ground and all that. No. If you're not married, you need to turn around and run. Yeah. If you're already married because you really didn't think ahead before you got married and you find yourself in this situation now and you want to stay married, then that's the time to try to find the common ground. But if you are not married yet, this is a sign of ginormous emergencies in the future, like really catastrophic relationship issues. So if you're not married, You need to say, okay, just realize we've been kind of, you know, getting to know each other, and I'm realizing you're not the one for me. I mean, maybe not in that, you can find a nice way to say it, but the thing is that you don't want to step into something that's going to be a big disaster later.
Yeah. Okay, so before we say the next thing real quick, I'm sorry. There's a squirrel hanging upside down in the tree right out the window. It's pretty funny watching him.
Tara's wondering, what is that squirrel doing?
So
He's hanging upside down?
Yeah.
Oh my. He's doing the whole backstretch thing.
Oh, he's on his own inversion table.
This is an inversion table in the tree, yeah.
But Mike brought up a very good point I don't think we've touched on yet is, what if he would have said to her, I'm leaving you if you don't vote for Trump? How do you think that would have gone over?
I think what this is...
Mike's favorite saying, I know how it would go over. It'd go over about as much as a turd in a punch bowl.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, seriously, it is so hypocritical, but you know darn tootin' well that if he would have told her, I'm going to leave you if you don't vote for Trump, she would have been screaming and yelling and throwing things and having just a hissy. You know she would have.
Well, and the problem is, I think, they didn't say so in the video, but the problem is, I think that, dude, you've given in, or you've pursued her or whatever, and y'all are now thinking with your hormones.
Yeah.
And you're going to let her manipulate you into this situation with hormones.
Yeah.
And then she's going to dominate you and oppress you, and you're either just going to wither, or you're going to be rebellious and do things that you shouldn't do or totally ruin the marriage. So these kinds of things, you need to get straight ahead of time, because the other stuff, the hormones will work themselves out. Like, you pick the right person and that'll be fine. But if you go the other way around, you're going to cause a major disaster. And as far as the political thing, political things are really strongly charged these days, and especially on the left. And so if you have differing opinions, significantly differing opinions on that, then it's just going to be misery, constant misery. And it's just not okay to get into that. Like, the Bible says that we should not be unequally yoked, and you may not be a Christian, but unequally yoked basically means, you know, two animals that are yoked together are walking along doing their work. And if one of them is big and strong and leading and the other one is falling behind, then they're unequally yoked, and it causes them to not be useful as animals, farm animals or whatever. And as people, if one of you believes one thing and the other one believes the other thing, and both of you want to be in charge, you're going to be tearing up your marriage and making yourselves miserable and wishing that you were single. If you're the woman that's like, I'm independent and self-reliant, and I don't want any man having anything to do with telling me what to do, then you should stay single. Because, you know, a husband shouldn't dominate you and force you to do everything you don't want to do all the time. But at the same time, if you want to be dominating and making all your own decisions and never having to consult anyone, then you need to not get married.
Yeah.
Because you'll be much happier not married, and you won't be making someone else miserable.
Well, and that's why when it comes to the money, when you're married, if you have not combined your finances, there's a major marriage issue there. Once you get married and you combine your finances and one or the other spouse is being detrimentally harmful in the finances to your marriage, okay, then you could maybe separate, or have separate bank accounts if you need to, or something like that. But if you go into the marriage thinking you're going to have separate bank accounts, and he's paying half for this and I'm paying half for that, and they're paying this and they're paying that,
you're planning to fail.
You're just setting yourself up for failure. There's just no... it's just not going to work. I know there's the rare person that's going to say, well, I've been married for 50 years in our finance. I know there are exceptions to every rule.
But the thing about getting married is there is not a shortage of people to get married to. You may be struggling to find that person, probably because you're not looking in the right place. Yeah. But there's not a shortage that you have to put up with something like that ahead of time.
Yeah.
And the same thing with finances. You know, if you know that the person has absolutely no control of finances, if you marry into that, then you're agreeing that that's the way you want to live.
It is.
And if you want to say, well, I'm going to have him have his bank account, I'm going to have my bank account so that I don't have to deal with his bad financial decisions, you're making a really dumb mistake.
Yeah.
Because that's still going to affect you. And it's going to eventually you'll be saying, well, I don't know why I have to do all the housework and I have to raise the kids and I have to work and he's only working part-time. Well, it's because you put up with that early on. And now he feels like this is the way it's been. You and him agree that it's going to be this way now, is the way he feels. Yeah. Doesn't mean you need to put up with it, but it means that if you're not in that situation, you should not get into that situation.
And once again, there's warning signs. Like we were talking to one of our children, and they were like, yeah, I was dating this person, and then they brought up they had $150,000 in student loan debts and no degree. And they said, I ran from that one. We were like, thank you.
Well, and you know what? They got along really well. They really liked each other, and it was a sad thing. But my goodness, do you want to take on $150,000 of debt?
And this person wasn't even attempting to pay it off. That was the thing. They're just expecting it to be all written off. Well, and so they weren't even attempting to pay it off.
And in the end, the one who was being responsible financially would have ended up
paying for it all.
Being responsible to pay for it all, and there would have been future bad financial decisions that would have been devastating to the one.
Now, if that person was actively trying to pay it off, actively working to get their finances back under control, and they were just really in love, okay, in that situation, if they're okay with working with them to pay that back, that's fine if you just really feel that way. But really think about, do I want to spend, if you're making, let's say you're making $50,000 a year, or even $100,000 a year. Let's say you're making $100,000 a year. Are you willing for 2 or 3 years to have a large chunk of your income going to pay their debt? Okay, maybe it is worth it if you just really love them that much. But you have to really think it through and make sure that this is worth doing.
Well, I just think the main thing is, there are so many people you can be in love with. There's not one person out there. And the reality is you're going to be a lot more in love with them if you're not always fighting about religion and politics and money and kids and your views on anything and who's going to be in charge in the family and what's the deal with money. And like, that's not going to make for a loving situation.
Yeah, definitely.
And the thing about the ultimatum also, like when I said, if she's giving him an ultimatum, then it's not going to work out because the guy's not going to want to be dominated in that situation. The time for an ultimatum is if you're married and he's, you know, going out with another woman and having lunch and saying it's just innocent and you know it's moving in a not innocent direction.
Gambling, drugs, porn, all that
Something is going on that's serious after you're already married, serious enough that this is going to break up everything. That's the time for an ultimatum. An ultimatum is not, I want to be in charge, but you're in charge, or I think you're in charge, so I want to be in charge, so I'm going to give you an ultimatum, or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. But as you're married, both people have to be willing to give. And that's also the same as like, a lot of people get into these relationships where the guy basically says, oh, well, the woman's going to take care of the kids and the house and everything else. And the woman has already established that she wants to go have a career and everything. So it ends up where she's doing all of that and the guy's not. That you should avoid that, getting into a marriage like that in the first place, which is easily avoidable if you address those things ahead of time.
Yep.
But if not, then you guys are going to have to work that out.
Yep.
And that's the time when to say about people's feelings and stuff. But ultimately, if you put yourself in a bad situation, then it's going to be real hard to fix the situation.
Yep. Go watch this video next. We'll see you guys next time. LivingOnADime.com.